Happy new week, and let's jump into some analysis. So I'm going to do more of a overall weekly view. We could see that on EU, price has just continued up without us. It didn't come down for an entry. What I did see a lot of people doing was getting into some really early sells because of this break, and then I saw some people taking entries from this supply zone. You can see why you shouldn't take counter trend trades, because that immediately got liquidated today. Overall, the trend here is, of course, bullish. So the reason I didn't take this short trade is because we've already had our retracement phase completed. You can see we've reached 50%, we reacted to the demand. So overall, this pair should be continuing bullish. We're not guaranteed to get an entry. We definitely shouldn't be taking counter trend trades. So I did see a lot of people getting in there. If you did take a loss, then that's a little explanation why you shouldn't. But yeah, obviously we have this demand here and all this liquidity forming, so price could come here again, and then there could again be early buyers trying to enter from this demand, which could give even more liquidity for price to come down and then come to the demand. But obviously, we have to wait for that setup. What we could see overall is we have this massive sideways range as well. So I'm currently not going to enter anything until we get really clear confirmation, since we've just grabbed liquidity from people that tried to buy in this demand and people that tried to sell in this supply. So that's why you shouldn't enter early, because when you trade in the middle of a range, you're just going to get liquidated in every direction. GU is a lot more interesting. This is a cleaner setup because EU is clearly in a range and the retracement is complete. But if you look at GU, price was bullish, and then we have 50%, which has not been reached yet, which means the retracement is still valid. Price can still come down here to any of these demand zones over here. So I'm happy to look for shorts with the retracement phase on GU. And of course we have supply over here on the 4 hour, and if we drop down to 15 or 5 minute, whichever you want, we have pretty much entries on both. I entered on the 5 minute. We have the breaker structure, POI entry. There was also a supply over here which you could have entered from. So yeah, following the break of the minor structure over here, you could choose whether you want this last buy before the sell or this clean supply zone over here for your entry. And then I'm just targeting the previous swing low on the 5 minute, and then of course overall our targets is all the way down to at least 50%, but we can always get more entries along the way. You don't need to be greedy and try catch some massive like 20-30 hour move in one go. I'm already break even on this position since we broke structure over here, so I've moved to break even. And then so far you can see that even though we didn't have candle close yet, this is pretty good. If this supply over here can hold price, which price is currently reacting from, then we should have a good push to the downside from here, which is what I'm looking for at the moment. Yeah, we can see that price currently reacted to this demand, so that's why we're having a bit of reaction from that at the moment, but it should break through and continue lower. There's so much liquidity lower, so It's risk-free anyway. Let's look at the other pairs as well. AU is just continuing in this massive sideways range still. I was only looking for entries since there was no supply. I wanted to see liquidation of the high and then a fresh supply, but price continued lower last week. But still, we have all this liquidity under here, so that's why I didn't take any entries from this demand zone. But it seems like after a lot of rejections, price is finally making that break and going to continue to the upside. However, there's no demand created over here in this move with the break of structure, because obviously if we draw the 50%, we've had the retracement phase. So we could look for longs already. So I'll delete this. But yeah, there's just no demand. So it's more possible that it could be liquidated and price could come down here, but since retracement is complete, more likely it might just continue pushing and take out those highs. So basically there is no setup on AU. It's kind of moving without us at the moment. NU is also kind of the same story. Didn't give any entries and it's most likely going to take out the highs here now. Let me just fix this. Gold, yeah, still we got the break finally, and supply over here, which got liquidated. There's a supply that's higher up, which is what got tapped. This was the liquidity. That's the extreme one. So yeah, you could look for entries in here, but I mean, it's a bit messy, but that was technically a break over there, but there was no supply. This would be a much cleaner break if you want to wait for that. But let's see on the 15 as well. Yeah, on the 15 this would be the break as well. So, and then you could look for entries from the 15-minute supply. So yeah, that's gold. UJ hasn't been the cleanest pair because of these, liquidation here and then another liquidation here, but we are in demand and we still haven't pushed to the upside. It's still not going down either. It's really weird. I did take a loss already trying to take this setup here, just got wicked out. So I'll be waiting. I'll probably not take any more longs on this because it seems really unclear. It's failed to push out multiple times. So unless we get a more really strong entry, for example, you can see I have an alert. I'm waiting for a break up here and then a really clean demand before I take any more entries. There were no entries on these pairs, which is good because you would have gotten liquidated on the low here, would have gotten liquidated here as well since this made a BOS. So since UCAD and USDCHF have both broken the lows, most likely UJ will continue lower as well and not give the entry setup that we're looking for. ADCAD. I don't like this squished price action because by the time you break structure over here, you've already completed the retracement, so there's not going to be any setup. Can pretty much skip all these pairs. Had JPY. It just liquidated all the lows, created break of structure. We got the demand here, and it should continue up to the upside. Let's check if there was an entry. Yeah, I was waiting for a setup, but there was no return back to this demand. So let's see if price can come back here. Let's check 15 as well. 15-minute would be like this. So there's a nice setup, especially since you swept the lows of Asia. So that's a nice setup. Let's check. This is just sideways. Euro JPY looks like we might finally be looking for longs from the demand zone soon, so keeping an eye on that. Yeah, this is just sideways. This is starting to play out like I wanted. So I said this demand is going to be liquidity, and that's what this line is for. We can see that price is breaking through it, coming down. Want to still see the rest of this liquidity getting taken out, and then potentially getting a reaction from this demand, or forming a fresh new demand. Either scenario would be good, and then can look for the long continuations. It'll pretty much be the same on the other GBP pairs, so I'll just check GU one last time, and yeah, I think that wraps it up for the analysis for today. It's dropping very nicely. As I mentioned at the start of this video, said we're expecting this supply to hold. You can see that really lovely rejection, continuation to the downside. So this is what we call a supply chain, because now we have that break here, and then we'd expect this new supply to be the next one to hold. And then if you just want to see how that was previously over here, so price is following the bearish momentum very nicely on this trade. So this is up about 2% now. And yeah, do keep an eye on the Discord if you want to see how this trade plays out. I'll keep it updated over there. And yeah, thanks for watching.